Before we begin tonight's stories, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It really helps the channel grow. And while you're here, comment your country below. I'd love to see where all the horror fans around the world are watching from. I work the closing shift at a local grocery store in a quiet part of town. It's not the kind of place where you'd expect trouble. Everyone knows everyone. And the most exciting thing that ever happens is someone forgetting their wallet at checkout. I usually leave around midnight, tired but grateful to have some peace on the drive home. That night it was raining lightly. The parking lot was almost empty, except for a single white sedan parked a few spaces away. I didn't think much of it. I unlocked my car, tossed my bag in, and drove off. But in my rearview mirror, I noticed the sedan's headlights turn on a few seconds later. It followed me out of the lot. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but every turn I made, the car made the same one. When I sped up, it sped up. When I slowed down, it matched me. I remember gripping the steering wheel tighter, telling myself not to overreact. Maybe they lived near me. Maybe it was just my imagination. But by the fifth turn, I knew it wasn't coincidence. I took a shortcut through a residential street and turned off my lights for a second, parking behind a truck. The white sedan passed slowly, its headlights cutting through the rain. I watched it disappear at the end of the street and waited another 2 minutes before heading home. My heart wouldn't stop racing. When I finally got inside, I locked every door and double-checked the windows. My house is small, one floor, with big front windows and thin curtains. The rain was tapping gently on the glass, and I kept staring outside, expecting to see headlights again. But nothing came. I tried to convince myself that it was just a random driver, but a part of me didn't believe that. The next morning, everything felt normal. I went to work, told a coworker about it, and we laughed it off. But that night, when I came home around midnight again, something was different. My porch light was off. I know I left it on before leaving for work because it automatically turns on at sunset. When I checked the bulb, it was unscrewed halfway. That sent a chill straight through me. I went inside quickly and locked the door. I didn't sleep much that night. Around 2 a.m., I thought I heard footsteps outside, faint, slow, crunching on the gravel near the side of the house. I stayed completely still, straining to listen. Then it stopped. I tried to look out the window, but it was too dark to see anything. I ended up staying awake until morning, jumping at every sound. When the sun finally came up, I walked outside and checked around the house. There were footprints in the mud near my bedroom window. They were big, larger than mine, and they led back toward the woods behind my house. I reported it to the police, but all they said was to keep my doors locked and call if I saw anything else. The next few nights, nothing happened. I started to relax again, thinking maybe whoever it was had moved on. But one evening, after I came home from work, I found something on my porch, a single photograph. It was a picture of my house, taken from across the street during the night. The curtains were open, and through the window, you could see me sitting on the couch, watching TV. That was the moment I realized I was being watched. I ran inside, locked everything, and called the police again. They came out, took the photo, and promised to patrol the area. But I could tell they didn't think much of it. They told me to install cameras. I did that same week. I placed one above the door and another facing the backyard. For a few nights it was quiet again. Then, around 3 a.m., one night, the motion alert on my phone went off. I checked the camera feed and froze. A man was standing just outside my bedroom window. He was wearing a dark hoodie, head tilted slightly, staring straight at the glass. He didn't move. He just stood there for what felt like forever. I called 911 immediately. By the time the police arrived, he was gone. But they found fresh footprints again, the same size as before, leading back into the woods. I didn't sleep for days after that. Every noise made my heart jump. I started sleeping with the lights on, a baseball bat next to my bed. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't think straight. I even considered moving, but I couldn't afford it yet. Then one morning, I checked my cameras before leaving for work and noticed something strange. The backyard camera feed was black. I went outside to check, and the entire camera was gone, ripped right off the wall. There were muddy handprints on the siding. That was it for me. I packed a few things, went to stay with a friend across town, and filed another report. I haven't stayed at that house since. A few weeks later, my friend called me while I was at work and told me someone had been parked outside his house in a white sedan for nearly an hour, just sitting there. By the time the police arrived, the car was gone. I sold the house 2 months later at a loss, and I moved to another state. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm driving home and see headlights in my rearview mirror, my chest tightens. I still can't help but watch to see if they'll turn when I do. It was almost midnight when I got home from my night shift at the delivery company. I live alone in a quiet neighborhood just outside of town, the kind of place where everyone keeps to themselves. My driveway faces a narrow street with a single flickering street light that always makes everything look darker than it is. That night was colder than usual. I remember seeing my breath when I stepped out of the car. The neighborhood was silent, no cars passing, no dogs barking, nothing. I locked my car, walked toward the porch, and as I reached for the keys in my pocket, I saw something that made me stop. There was a man standing at the edge of my driveway. He wasn't moving, just standing still under the broken streetlight. He was tall, wearing a dark jacket and jeans, his face hidden beneath a cap. I froze, trying to make sense of it. I thought maybe it was one of the neighbors, but I didn't recognize him. I called out, "Hey, can I help you?" No answer. He just stood there. The silence stretched on so long that I started to feel the hair rise on the back of my neck. I unlocked my door quickly and stepped inside, closing it behind me. Through the small glass window, I could still see his silhouette. He hadn't moved an inch. I turned off the lights and peeked again. He was gone. I checked outside. Nothing. I even went around to the back porch to see if maybe he'd walked off. The whole place was empty. I tried to shake it off and told myself maybe it was just someone passing through. But something about how still he'd been, how quiet everything was, made it feel wrong. The next morning, when I stepped out to go to work, there were footprints in the dirt beside the driveway. They led from the street up toward the side of my house. My stomach dropped when I realized they stopped right beneath my bedroom window. I checked the ground. There were shoe marks pressed deep into the soil, like someone had been standing there for a long time. I didn't tell anyone about it. I figured maybe it was just kids messing around. But that night, it happened again. Around 11 p.m., I was in bed watching TV when I heard something outside. It sounded like gravel shifting under someone's feet. I muted the TV and listened. The sound came again, closer this time. I got up, went to the window, and slowly pulled the curtain back. He was there again. The same man standing at the edge of my driveway, looking straight toward my house. His face was still hidden, but I could see the outline of him clearly under the streetlight. I stared for a few seconds before grabbing my phone and calling 911. While I was on the phone with the dispatcher, I looked again, and he was gone. By the time the police came, there was no one around. They searched the area and told me they didn't find anything. They said it could have been a drunk passerby or someone lost. I wanted to believe that, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Over the next few nights, nothing happened. I started parking closer to the door, keeping the lights on outside. Then, about a week later, I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of something tapping on glass. It was faint at first, like small clicks. It was coming from the living room. I grabbed a flashlight and walked quietly down the hallway. The tapping stopped when I reached the corner. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it was shaking my chest. I flicked the light on and saw it. Someone had written on my living room window with a finger. 3 words in the condensation. "I see you." I stepped back so fast I almost tripped. I ran to check the locks, every single one. Everything was still locked from the inside. I called the police again, and when they came, they searched the perimeter, but found nothing. The footprints were there again, right outside the window. After that, I started sleeping with my phone recording, hoping to catch something. 2 nights later, I did. Around 2:40 a.m., the camera picked up faint movement near the porch. I scrubbed through the footage and nearly dropped my phone. The man was back, standing at the bottom of the steps, just staring at the front door. He stood there for almost 10 minutes before walking away into the darkness. I showed the video to the police. They took it seriously this time, said they'd send extra patrols. For a while it worked. Weeks passed without any more signs of him. I finally started to feel normal again, but that peace didn't last. One evening, I came home from work, opened my mailbox, and inside was a small envelope. No name, no stamp, just my address written in messy handwriting. Inside was a photo. It was me, asleep in my bed. The photo was taken through my bedroom window. I didn't even finish packing. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and drove straight to my friend's place across town. The police took the photo, started an investigation, and advised me not to return home alone. I moved out 2 weeks later. To this day, they never caught anyone. The police think it might have been someone I knew, but I can't think of a single person who would do something like that. Sometimes, late at night, I'll look out my new apartment window and swear I can see someone standing across the street just beyond the light, watching. Maybe it's just my mind playing tricks on me. But after what happened, I've learned not to ignore that feeling. Because when someone wants to be unseen, you almost never notice them until it's too late. I used to rent a small house on the edge of town. It wasn't much, but it was quiet and affordable. The backyard had a tall wooden fence that separated it from a stretch of overgrown woods. I liked the privacy. I'd sit out there most nights after work with a drink, listening to the crickets. For the first few months, everything was normal. The neighbors were friendly and the street was calm. But around late September, I started to notice strange things happening in the yard. One night, I came home around 10 p.m. and noticed that the gate to the backyard was open. I knew I'd locked it that morning. I brushed it off, thinking maybe the wind blew it open or an animal had pushed it. But then it happened again and again. Almost every night for a week, I'd find that gate open. I started locking it with a chain and padlock. That stopped it from opening, but it didn't stop the feeling that someone was back there. The first time I actually saw him was a Saturday night. I was sitting in the living room watching TV when I heard the sound of twigs snapping outside the window. The curtains were drawn, but I could see a shadow moving past the light that came through the blinds. I turned off the TV and just sat there listening. Then came another sound. Slow footsteps, crunching on the gravel near the back porch. I grabbed a flashlight, went to the window, and carefully lifted the curtain. For a split second, I saw a man standing just beyond the fence, looking directly at the house. He was tall, maybe in his 40s, wearing dark clothes. I couldn't make out his face, but I could see his eyes reflecting in the light like an animal's. I stepped back and grabbed my phone to call the police. But when I looked again, he was gone. The police came and checked around, but didn't find anyone. They said it was probably a trespasser or a hunter who got lost. But this wasn't the kind of place people wandered into by accident. The next night, I set up a small motion light on the back porch. Around 2 a.m., it went off. I looked outside, but there was nothing there. The light kept triggering every few hours, but each time I checked, no one was there. It got to the point where I stopped sleeping. A few days later, I decided to set up my old security camera by the back door, facing the fence. The next morning, when I checked the footage, my blood ran cold. Around 3:17 a.m., the camera caught a man standing at the edge of the yard, just beyond the light. He wasn't moving. He stood there for over 20 minutes, staring straight at the camera. His head tilted slightly to one side, like he was studying it. He never came closer, never said a word, just stood there, motionless, before walking off into the woods. I took the footage to the police again. They said they'd increase patrols, but there wasn't much they could do since he hadn't actually entered my property. Their advice was to keep the lights on and make sure the doors stayed locked. That didn't make me feel any better. Things went quiet for a few days. Then one night, I woke up to my phone buzzing. The motion camera had sent an alert. I opened the app, and there he was again. Only this time, he wasn't behind the fence. He was inside the yard, standing right in front of the back door. He was holding something in his hand, something long and thin. At first, I thought it was a stick, but when I zoomed in, I realized it was a knife. I called the police immediately. They showed up within minutes, but by the time they arrived, he was gone again. They searched the woods with flashlights, even brought a dog unit, but they found nothing. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked like him. The next morning, I packed a bag and stayed at a friend's place. When I came back 2 days later, there was a note taped to my back door. It said, "You shouldn't have left." That was it. No signature, no handwriting I recognized. Just those 4 words written in black marker. I moved out that same week. I told the landlord what happened, and he wasn't even surprised. He said the last tenant left suddenly too, for personal reasons. I didn't ask what that meant. About a month after I moved, I ran into one of my old neighbors at a grocery store. I mentioned what had happened, and his face went pale. He told me that a few weeks earlier, someone broke into that same house through the back door. The new tenant had found muddy footprints leading from the woods into the kitchen. They never caught the guy. Sometimes I wonder if he was living out there in the woods the whole time, just watching me night after night, waiting for me to slip up. I still have the footage from that night saved on my phone, but I can't bring myself to watch it again. Because even though I moved miles away, I still wake up sometimes around 3 a.m., feeling like someone's outside my window. I'll look through the blinds, and for a second, I always think I see him, standing there, head tilted, just watching, and every single time, I have to remind myself to breathe. Because once you've been watched that closely, you never really feel alone again. If you made it this far, you're braver than most. Which of these stories got under your skin the most? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more true horror every week.